Oh, does anybody need a advisory committee meeting, Cal? Schedule? Brandon, do you want one?
Alrighty, Sandra.
Are we ready? Welcome to the November 20th, 109 Advisory Committee meeting. We have a nice short agenda today. And so we're called to order. And the first thing is the approval of the October 16th minutes. Has anyone looked at the minutes?
Have we received them?
Well, this is the advisory committee.
They were in the advisory.
Yeah, they were. Would you like to move approval?
I'll back you, Cindy, and I make a motion to approve.
Is there a second? Marie? Thank you. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Nay? Okay, they pass unanimously. Now we're to new business. Or actually, we're to the update of the capture rate study and the cost of services study. Is that Pete?
Yeah. Okay, capture rate study, while it has been finally approved in scope, we have not gotten started yet. So really not much to update on that. The cost of services study, right now we have met with the initial data request, which has a lot of GIS data, statistics that we've kept for a long time, household level stuff, and it's really the background and foundation. Right now we're in discussions about the collection of data points. So one of the biggest keys to that is we want to ensure that we have enough data points to have at least a 95% confidence in the numbers. So that's kind of where we're at with Raftellus at this point. So really short update, that's kind of what we're doing.
In terms of the capture rate study, I know that there have been issues attached to getting it started. What was the primary issue?
Primary issue was price. The price for doing that was really high. We could not do it. I couldn't in all good consciousness spend that money for what we was gonna get. So we renegotiated the scope. SWINS took on quite a few things to reduce the cost, and we got to a point right at $50,000, which is about maybe even a third, if not more, of what the original bid was. So basically it was price. I don't think that we've lost any data that we're gonna get from it. It was just working to how we was gonna do it to lower that price, which I think we were successful.
Any questions? All right, new business. The application process for organizations to receive waste district funding.
Okay, so the first thing that I wanted to do was recap why we were having this discussion. So if anyone was here, I think the last time we were in person, actually, Rana from Feed Louisville, I can't think of her last name, but she was here and gave a presentation basically requesting funding from the district. I think everybody on the board was really supportive of their efforts, but it kind of sparked this idea that we don't really have standards or whatever, and it's hard to give money without knowing what kind of standards we're gonna always be held to. So yeah, so people don't just come asking for money all the time, and we have to somehow decide who gets money and who doesn't or whatever. So that's kind of why this discussion came up. So then of course it got brought toward advisory committee to try to come up with some sort of plan. We've had a discussion internally where it seems it's kind of like giving a grant. So we were looking at that process and how others might do that. So on this cute little square diagram, we made kind of a list of kind of the order of things we would need, eligibility requirements, criteria, the categories that maybe you could apply and, your project would be under, the application itself, we have to have that. Scoring, which means we need criteria for that, we need a team that scores and, make sure that, it aligns with the 5-year plan. And then an agreement, so even if we chose who to give some money to, you have to have an agreement that everybody, agrees to, and then to award that. And then there has to be some sort of reporting, because there's probably some measurables in there, and they gotta report that to us. There would be some sort of length of time, like, for the whole thing, and then a final report. So that's basically like listing out the general outline of what it would be. So then I went through each of those blocks, to kind of think about what we already, you guys chime in on anything, because this is all the discussion is. I can just kind of share what I have, and then we can go backwards. But for applicant eligibility, I actually found a PDF online from St. Louis, like a waste district in St. Louis, where they have a lot more money. They have like a couple million they give away every year or something, and they take grant applications, so they have a lot laid out. So it's nice, to kind of look at that. And so that was their description of eligibility, which I know it's kind of lengthy there, but then for criteria, Bruce, who's on the phone, I hope can hear, Bruce had sent us, the state of Indiana does some grants, and so he had some scoring criteria on a spreadsheet that he sent to us, and those were the categories for scoring and how many points you would award. And so it added to 100. They have a whole team doing it, have an average and whatnot. I'm gonna just go through all of these, and then we'll just backtrack. And then category possibilities, waste reduction, reuse, recycling, composting, household hazardous waste, and maybe another category. And then of course we can make those what we actually need based on that 5-year plan. And then as far as an application, obviously we need them to tell us what their overall goal is. We need the applicant's information, the impacts, a project description, and measurables, just to be very vague really, but that's kind of some of the major things that would be in an application. So from this point on, I guess we just need to discuss the idea of kind of mocking up like a grant situation, if that's the way to go. Maybe you all have totally different ideas on this.
I think your thinking makes good sense. What kind of a project were they looking for? Was it consistent with the 5-year plan, for example?
Well, the Feed Louisville, they were doing a campaign to raise money. So it was sort of just asking for donations, So, and I think that's where, even though they gave us lots of information about their project, their whole system, and we've toured and seen it all, and it's amazing, it would need to be more specific on how they're going to use the money.
Yeah, so there was a lot of discussion as to whether or not waste district funds can be utilized for a donation. So it came down to the public purpose, and the county attorney asked, I think it's like 4 different questions, and if it is a yes to each one of those, and how does it impact all people in Jefferson County? It can't, in other words, it can't benefit just a single organization or small group. It needs to be for the public good. So there was a lot to that, and that's how we kind of came into this. All right, well, how do we go about this and do it fair? And that's how we came into this process. I think one of the things to also keep in mind before we get too far into it is looking at the amount. Okay, we just laid out a lot of different categories, but if we've got $50,000, maybe we should shorten our categories so that we can have a bigger impact. Maybe we can get further down the line. We don't have $6 million. But that was kind of where we were, and whatever we do, this has to be for a public purpose. And I think one of the board members brought up several good facts, but it was that it needs to align with the 5-year solid waste management plan. So that was a really big, part of it, so, anyway. that's what
When I
we
was
thought.
at MSD and we got asked for money, sometimes it was ridiculous. And other times it was somewhat coherent, but one ethic we took was, you have to be willing to be transparent and accountable as to how you spend this money. And if it was a nonprofit or whatever, that didn't let other people see their books and didn't provide any financial accounting, like an annual report or anything, that was dollar for dollar, where's this money going? We just said, no can do.
That was something that we talked about too, the complexity of applying for a grant versus the money that you're gonna get.
Exactly.
We don't, I mean, cause we can apply for illegal open dump grants, but the paperwork to clean up a $1,000 dump
Ain't worth it.
ain't worth it. So we also have to look at the complexity of what we're doing and the accountability of what we're asking them versus the amount of money that we're spending.
There's probably a foundation in town that operates a granting program that maybe we could have operate something like this for us if we wanted to, that already has the paperwork and all that stuff carved out, like maybe the Community Foundation of Louisville. I am making that up, but there's probably some entity that does do small dollar grants that could do it for us if we felt the need to do it. But I note that if we've only had one request and it didn't really have anything to do with waste reduction, maybe we don't need to solve this problem yet.
Well, it did have to do with waste reduction.
Okay.
It just was the fact that the reason they came to us at the time was because it was a campaign. They were like
Okay.
boosting their.
But actually, it was nebulous. It probably would not complete all the steps that it did.
One of our, the Louisville Climate Action Network, one of our clients right now is Franciscan Kitchen, as you know, and they feed about 600 low-income people lunch 6 days a week. And they do it on a styrofoam, what they call a tray, we would call it a divided plate. And a lot of these people are dealing with homelessness and mental health problems, and they don't wanna eat around other people, so they leave the site with their food and they eat it in the neighborhood and they litter, and it makes everybody upset. And, you know, I would love to get them on biodegradable cardboard trays so that we could just throw the food waste and that, if we can keep them on the grounds and not have all this litter. The waste baskets everywhere in that neighborhood are overflowing. When I wait for the bus, I'm picking up litter and I know where it's coming from. To me, you could argue that would be a coherent place to offer a grant to pay the cost differential to get biodegradable stuff so that they could then do composting. It wouldn't be that much money. But even then, I don't know that I would ask this organization to create a whole new program for something like that.
You know, the fact that, we had this one request, we've had other people that are definitely interested in things. So I think this is a way for us to stir development, I mean, potentially, new businesses, startups. I think from the resource recycling conference, what they did was they used something similar to this to be taking in applications, but also helping the company come in, help them create a business plan, mentor them until they get to the end of the program where we bring in potential funders that would help fund their startup.
An incubator.
An incubator of sorts, which I thought was a great idea and could be potentially something that we do with this. So we still have options on the way that we wanna do this, but it all's gonna end up with some kind of a process that we're gonna have to have. So I think it's still time to talk about it.
And to the request that was made, the Feed Louisville presentation, I mean, their pitch to us was like, they are going into restaurants, they're going into grocery stores and recovering what would be food waste and repurposing it, you know, in a timely manner and turning it around
So it's
to
general
people in need.
initiative.
So that was their
General
request.
support.
They wanted us to support their food recovery
Okay.
effort, but I think, you know, even just, you know, kind of plagiarizing the St. Louis stuff, you know, having something is better than nothing. the bones of this look really good. We could just sort of, beef it up and, start it, put it out there at least so that if this request or another request comes in, at least have some uniform way of documenting those requests and, being able to, and we're not even the ones making the decision, we're doing this for the 109 board so that they have something to consider and file and you might have a year where only one organization comes to request for money. You might have a year where 6 come to ask for money, at least you have apples to apples to compare all the paperwork, so I think this is a good approach.
I think if we take a soft launch approach, maybe we start small with maybe doing 1 or 2 grants, working out the kinks in the process, then the next year, maybe you advertise that we're accepting applications for these things that really help us complete our mission. We're buying, really helping us do our mission, potentially getting started.
If we start with, this bare bones, these 9 points, beef them up a little bit, and if we find that next year we didn't get all the information that was wanted, then we can just build onto it, so. It doesn't have to be
One of
perfect.
the major problems is gonna be the measurables.
Are these grants capped?
Well, they could be, I don't know. That's the question. We're building this from the ground up.
As we fly it. As we fly it.
So, I mean, most grants I know, they have a cap. And it could be that we decide in the first year the cap is $50,000. And we can divide it up by however we feel like, if we can give it to 1 applicant or split that between 3 applicants, that would be at the discretion of the board and the applications we get, or the scoring team on how to do this. So, Indiana had, I think it was like 8 people that scored the proposals. And, they went through all those criteria. At the end, you had a final score. And then I think the one part about this, and I'm not sure that we had it up there, is that once you get the basic scores, then you have a project meeting to discuss it so that you're sure that you understand them and they understand you. And then you come up with the agreement.
And it's matching.
It's an interesting thing.
I just presented on that grant. That's the grant I was telling about you.
Yeah, Indiana, it is matching.
It is matching, dollar for dollar.
Yeah.
And there's a max dollar they have to give away, and there's a max dollar per applicant.
So here's a question, does it have to go through Metro purchasing? Because a lot of projects that involve proposals and review teams and criteria have to be overseen by the purchasing department.
I do not know the answer to that. That would have to be something that we'll research.
Actually, it's a good question, because
Non-disclosure.
certainly the agreement would have to go through some kind of legal review.
Well, it could just be the county attorney, but I've worked on
Yes.
some stuff for the sustainability office, and I had to do non-disclosure agreements with the purchasing department, and I had to measure the, applications against the criteria, and my responses went to purchasing, not sustainability, for example.
So was it, to receive a grant
Or
or
to
to
be, administer a program in lieu of.
I've not had anything where we've had money outgoing. It's always been us asking for money.
Right.
The other aspect of the state of Indiana, there's a 5-year reporting period. So after you receive your grant, your project is what's called complete, you have to report back over 5 years. So they make sure that you're following what you said you were
Report
The
once
state of
or every
Kentucky wants
year?
to
annually,
Wow.
annually for 5 years.
The
That's a
state of
big
Kentucky
project,
did
I
it
hope.
several ways.
If you don't do that, you have to get money back.
I don't know what the penalty is, for that, I don't know.
That's how Kentucky does, right?
Yeah.
I've never not done it.
So
Good answer.
there's lengths of time. I think with the state of Kentucky, we did a grant. It was a 1-year process, but it was a 3-year reporting. And if you failed at the end of it, then they never came, if they came back to say that they wanted your money. But I do know that with most of their grants is if you don't fulfill your part, you have to give the money back. It disqualifies you from asking again.
One of our advisory board members that's on the phone is the chair of that committee, and I'm sure they can get you copies of it.
Yeah, he sent us some stuff. Thanks, Bruce. that was the impetus behind creating this process.
But I think starting with a budget, if you want, a first step, we need to identify that we have $50,000 to, invest in the community, efforts to increase recycling.
So would the committee have a recommendation to the board on how much money we should start with?
I think the board has to look at their budget before they,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think we can pick an amount of money when they're the ones that deal with the budget and they get monthly reports on the budget, which we don't.
Yeah, they get to decide whether or not they award any money at all, we're just helping
Exactly.
them provide a framework for considering
Do
it.
you think there's a minimum that makes the whole process worthwhile for the person applying and for us on the backside? Cause it's a lot of work.
I don't know, is the board in the habit of giving out small amounts of money? Maybe they usually give away like $500 a year or $200, so then,
There's
We
no
are
precedent.
I say, because it's public money, right? I mean, it should all, whether they're requesting 500 or 5,000 or 50,000, they should at least be able to document it.
I mean, I would start with, you gotta be a 501c3 in good standing with both the IRS and the Secretary of State, something like that. And if somebody's not filing their annual reports with the Secretary of State for $15 a year, you're out.
Yeah, it's a prerequisite to even apply.
But I see people who don't. People who, they want services and they're not even filing their reports.
You're talking nonprofit there too.
I am.
Yeah,
But I've seen businesses too, or foundations, where they just don't even report their stuff.
Why would we, the advisory committee, limit who can even apply for the grants? Because maybe there's a property owner who could do something really good if they just had a little bit of help. They're not gonna make money if they do it for themselves, but if we help them, they wouldn't be a 501, not even if the 109 board helped them. It could materially help solid waste management in the county, but not be a 501c3 effort, or, a company who, with some support, could do something really great at scale, but because they're not a 501c3, we're not gonna support it. I mean, I don't think we need to put limits on it. I think it's up to the board to consider, as these applications come in, is this a worthy project, worthy of the county money?
The one for St. Louis includes municipality, county, public institution, nonprofit, private business, or individual currently operating.
To go back to Sarah Linden's, before we were even able to be eligible for one of the finals, we had inspection by IDEM, which you're all EPA. They went through made sure all of our documents were in line. I had to have a letter from the bank. I had to sign off that I wasn't hiring illegal aliens and not paying less than minimum wage. And there was a dozen other items that made sure that we were operating as a reputable business.
You couldn't have an outstanding lien for not having paid your property taxes and then get a grant.
Right.
But purchasing has people who do this stuff. Well, they did, maybe they're understaffed, but.
I just don't know that, are there other metro agencies that provide grant funds?
Well, the Metro Council people do, and I don't know if that's treated the same, but they all have discretionary funds that traditionally have gone to a lot of nonprofits.
I think that's.
Does the 109 board have a pot of money that they're allowed to give away?
That was the discussion that we had about Feed Louisville, whether or not it was even legal for us to do, yes.
Because if there's not a pot of money, then this is all new.
Yeah, there is, I mean, the revenues coming into the district right now are, up, and we do have a surplus now, we do have other things that we want to do. We want to redo recycling centers, that was part of the 5-year solid waste management plan. So it's a management and decisions based upon money.
What the 109 board doesn't necessarily have is, personnel and equipment teams to go out and do certain projects. If a private or, company entity comes and says, we can do this, the 109 board could use their money to invest in that and make it.
So not limit it to 1.13C or whatever that is. But I would think that somewhat the risk goes up if you're going with a entity that, has done none of this before, if they're
Well,
an average
but the
citizen.
501c3, I agree with you, because I think small businesses, apartment owner, I can see us accomplishing our goals without limiting this to charitable institutions.
What I don't wanna do is take tax dollars and turn it into profit. If it's
I hear
meeting
you.
business needs, I'm cool, but I don't wanna see 25% taken off as overhead, cause somebody's really trying to make money. But that's why you ask them for a budget and you ask for accounting and stuff like that.
I'm pretty sure the PDF from St. Louis had some very specific things in there about profit,
Right.
like,
We had to put a whole financial model together.
I beg your pardon,
We had to put a whole financial model together for the whole project,
but how much money were you going for?
$500,000.
Okay, and that's
Okay.
appropriate, but if we're talking $3,000, then we can lower the challenges.
so this
Yeah.
still has to specify how are
That's
you
right.
using this.
That's
And it didn't matter if you were asking for 5,000,
Really?
it didn't matter, the criteria was the same.
It is 5:06. I kept this meeting till 5:15 just because of the board coming in. So to recap, it does sound like we want to pursue this, or we would ask the board to keep going with this, right?
We wanna help the board do this.
Yeah, I don't think I don't think we're promoting anything at the board level, I think we're giving them the benefit of what you've
Yes.
done.
And that according to Bruce, maybe the first question is how much money would they be willing to?
But how could they know that until they work on next year's budget? You know, I mean, I don't think we can get them committed to something before they know what their budget needs are
Unless
for
it's
next
small.
year.
It's still not our job to make decisions on whether this project or that project's working. That's the 109 board's job. We're just helping the 109 board by helping them develop a framework to consider these requests.
So as far as the board funding and what they can do, they have rollover funds. The waste districts are really the only ones that can roll funds from that one year to the next, unlike government that has to have at the end of the year, everything has to bounce out. So I think that they do have a little bit of a latitude to say, yeah, this is above and beyond, we can afford this off the bat, it's not like metro government or the state. I think they have a little bit more leeway in their budgeting.
Well, then the next step would be to take all of these ideas, which nobody seems to express negativity on, and start working on the individual details, the forms, the things like that. What are if we've got major components, but we don't have any explanations for them. So if the board liked it, then the next step is more to the structure, more detail to the
To
structure.
me, the first step would be make sure purchasing doesn't have to be involved.
I think it's,
I think that's a good idea.
And if they say, no, you can do what you want, cool. But if they say, oh, no, we have our hands on
Yeah,
that
and if
one,
they
we
do
need
have
to know it.
requirements, that, okay, we'll
Yeah.
have to have this, and this, we build those into the
Yes,
process.
we can
Yes,
certainly
absolutely.
mirror them.
Yeah.
The only one thing I would add on those criteria, which I think are helpful because it illustrates and helps people to understand what we're talking about, is litter. That one ought to be specifically listed where it had something like other benefits or something, I would call out litter, because we
Like
have a
a
litter problem.
category. litter.
Well, the next level down, you had, other, like you had
Down at the bottom.
it was like a list of
Yeah.
about 10 things, I thought, further on your
Yeah, there was
presentation.
another one.
This was
Keep
that.
going.
That was at the end. This
That
one.
one.
Oh.
That,
This was the criteria from the state of Indiana's,
Okay.
funding.
but I would just like to see litter be either an illustration of other environmental benefits or be its own category.
And as long as you said that, I've got one that, I want more education.
Right.
I can see that people could do and communicate with people that we can't, or that we don't have enough resources to do it.
So that would be part of developing the criteria, like whatever your project is, it needs to, well,
Well, it needs to
help
come,
litter,
so,
but definitely not
Yeah,
cause
this,
it.
so this slide, this is how they get points to compare
Yes,
this
correct.
project versus this
Right,
project. And
Right.
one project could be specific on picking up litter, and they could get, points for that. I guess it would come out of the other environmental benefit, or the need for the work, you could give them extra
Litter
points for that.
reduction.
But another project might have, reduction of greenhouse gases as a benefit, so they get points for that, so.
So for their funding, their hope that it'll do all of this, but, the top two are the most important, obviously, based
I
on
do
scoring.
like-
So
I
we
do
would
like
just have to
this idea.
make our
We only
own.
should have one set of scoring. I think.
Right, we would.
Unless we wanna have two pots of money, we need to start small.
Yeah.
I mean, I can see things like, if the Girl Scouts of Louisville or the Boy Scouts of Louisville wanna have an organized program to help the scout leaders to cover littering or waste management and recycling, cause they have badges on it. I'm told the adults won't do those badges unless they're comfortable with the content. If we put on a seminar on how to do it, and then maybe facilitated with some expenses, we could get more kids inculcated to this stuff. The sky could be the limit, but that I think needs to be, everybody has to use the same criteria, or it's confusing to the public, and people can accuse you of picking and choosing favorites, and then you get into an ugly situation.
Well, like, if a project doesn't improve the economy or jobs at all, they would get 0 points out of that possible 15, but
But
if
they
another
would know this
project.
ahead of time, so
Yeah.
they're obviously
Yeah.
going to try to.
Just cause you're the highest one in the point system doesn't mean you're gonna get your grant.
That's
Right, it's just,
Yeah.
it facilitates.
That's true.
What they do is here's your top 10 scores, and they'll do presentations till they run out of money.
Mhm.
It may be 8, 9, and 10 may not even present their money, cause they're out of their pocket.
And you don't get scored here unless you've passed the criteria of you don't have any liens against you, you've registered and you're in good standing, that kind of thing. That should be the first part, then that.
Well, we have 3 more minutes, and I think there's plenty of direction for now. There is no staff update, because now we know what they've been doing. And the last thing is public input. Is there anybody in the public who would like to be heard on items pertaining to the agenda?
Do I need to bring up the ADA stuff here?
It's
Or
next.
wait, okay.
All right, the next, 109 board meeting is November 20th, and the next advisory committee is December 18th.
December 18th, and I put a note because it's getting close to Christmas,
Dun,
and
dun,
just
dun,
wanna throw it out there.
be here.
I'll go ahead and leadership. And that'll be a bigger question for the board, actually, because Christmas Day.
So does this
is a
mean
normal
that the
meeting,
board
so
doesn't meet again since?
I don't know,
We
because
will-
it
we
would be
will-
Christmas.
Talk about that tonight, as whether or not they wanna do another modified format like this, or they just wanna skip the board meeting.
Well, I'll keep you up to date on that.
Thank you. That's it, thank you very much. I need a motion to,
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
thank you. Second, first and second. All in favor?
Aye.
I'm sure there's no